in this video, I just want to get a few things clear. I do not want to demean the experiences of anyone who was actually diagnosed with a speech impediment. I do not have a speech impediment now. I was never diagnosed with one at any point. I just had, I had impeded speech as a child, and I think it was caused by other things than, just having it. Like, I think it was maybe caused by, probably the umbrella of neurodivergency, but maybe specifically the anxiety that I felt because of that. And as I grew up and, got older, it somewhat went away. It still happens occasionally, but what I'm talking about is I had a stammer. I had a really intense stammer as a child. What a stammer is, it's different than a stutter. I was always calling it a stutter, and I, got the better terminology. A stutter is when you are trying to say a syllable and you get stuck on it. So like if I was about to say, I went down the street, if I stuttered on that, I'd be like, I went down this, that's a stutter. So what I did was I would stammer, where I would get stuck on the same syllable and just repeat it again and again. So instead of saying, I went down the street, I'd be like, I went down the street, the street. That wasn't intentional. I was actually trying to say the street, but I got stuck on the part of it. So that's an example. It can kind of still happen occasionally. It happens to everyone. Everybody stammers sometimes. And what I can actually really vividly recall that it would happen in times where I was really excited, I guess, but also times where I was nervous that I wasn't going to get an opportunity to speak, I guess. And because I was nervous that I wouldn't get the opportunity to speak, I would stammer. And another time this would happen, and I'm gonna say that I had this really bad up until about double digits. I went to public school, and I still would do it, but I just became sort of a quieter person and a little bit more reserved over going through homeschool in the third grade. I did the third grade twice, and I was homeschooled. So I became quieter during that, and then I just didn't have as many chances to stammer because I was mostly around my family, and it's just a kind of a different social connection. I would mostly stammer, from the ages 1 to 8. Whenever I started talking to around 8. And what I can remember so vividly is everyone at school called me KK. Everybody called me KK. I almost never actually heard my own name, and I only heard my own name from the teachers, and that's the only way that people would know, because anytime someone would ask me my name, I knew that I would stammer when I said my name. I was like, I'm going to stammer. Because I knew I was going to stammer, it would just make me stammer harder and more. So, I would just say, instead of saying my name's Kaylin, I'd say my name's K. And I would just keep saying K again and again. So thus the name KK was born. And so that's where I got that nickname, and that's what kids would call me. And it was times like that where it was really around my peers is the funny thing, because one time my parents, they were aware of this. They were aware that I had, impeded speech, because they would observe it. It would happen less when I was talking to them because I'm not nervous as much. But if I was trying to explain something and I was just going too fast with my words, I was really excited about something, I would get really frustrated because I'd be trying to tell them something, and I'd be like, oh, and then Sonic did this, and they'd be like, huh, that's weird. So they flagged me to the teachers, and I got pulled aside one day. And this is so funny. When I got pulled aside, I don't have any remembrance of this. I guess I was too young to remember this. But this is what my parents told me. This is what my parents told me. The teachers told them. Apparently, what happened is when I got pulled aside, because I feel like my teachers probably observed it a little bit too. But when the person who was there, and we lived in a really small town, so I feel like someone had actually come out from the city or something like that. I got pulled aside, and I did every single test perfectly, and it's because I wasn't unable to speak. That wasn't it. It was actually in my mind thinking about the conversation I was having was what was causing me to stammer. So I when I got the test, he was like, okay, this is a picture. I'm pretty sure it was pictures. So it's probably what's this animal? I'd be like, that's a dog, because in my head, I'm not thinking can I say dog correctly? All I was thinking about is, what is that animal? Like, yeah, it's a dog. Like, what's this object? It's a ball, you know? And then there's obviously like, there's obviously like certain sounds that I struggled with more, specifically K. So I feel like the person was trying to test me by like saying or like giving me those words. And I wasn't aware that it was for a speech impediment. They don't pull you inside and say, hey, we're going to see if you talk funny or not. They were just like giving me a test. So that was sort of that. And so I never got help ever again for my speech impediment. And I think, like I said, what made it go away is not that I guess it never really went away, actually. I can remember being like really frustrated when I would talk to my friends that I eventually made. It was more so that I didn't have any friends. Because when I was with my brother, it was like a little bit less frustrating because I was just around him so much, so that I wasn't really as afraid of not being able to say what I wanted to. He's also my little brother, so he like looked up to me. I mean, not like a lot because we were so close in age, only 2 years apart, but he would usually be interested in what I was saying a little bit. So he would kind of be waiting patiently as opposed to just like moving on from the conversation. So this is something that I am going to talk about a lot on this channel, is I have a really big problem with perception and like people's attention. Like I said, there's nothing really in my childhood, like my parents never like neglected me or didn't give me enough attention. I was definitely super desperate for my dad's attention, but that was only because he had a job, you know, so like I just saw him not as much. And I will make, you know, probably a video about that because my therapist like really tried to like ask a lot of questions about that. So I am still kind of unpacking that. But again, I think that it was very just normal aspects of childhood, you know, like I wasn't being neglected. Like even when I would bug my dad, he wouldn't just like hard ignore me. He would like, if I brought him a picture, he'd be like, oh, that's so cool. Like, that's cool, you know, and then just go back to work. So when I'm really trying to focus on my childhood and like what made me like this, what made me so desperate for other people's attention, it was, and I'm not a super attention desperate person. It's something I've done a lot of working on, but I can definitely accept that is a trait that has caused a lot of things. So I think a lot of it boils down to people, like I was just really insecure about like the actual things I was saying. And I think that like my stammer actually might be a way bigger part of that. Or maybe it's not a way bigger part of that. Maybe it's like just a manifestation showing that I always felt this way for some reason. I don't know which one, but for some reason I feel like it's the other way. For some reason I feel like the stammer and like me being super insecure about like the value of the things I had to say and like not being perceived by the people around me. I think it's more that. I really do think it's more that. And I know for a fact that my stammer really stopped once I started smoking marijuana. My parents, I had tons of issues as like a teenager, and when I was about like, I was like 16, but I was like kind of like later into 16, I think. My parents gave me weed and said that I could smoke at home. And it was because my mom told me this recently, it's because they were having just problems with me. I was just being really unruly, and that was because of just mental stuff. It was very clear I was just not doing okay. And then my mom described that when I started smoking weed, I was instantly much easier to be around. And I do remember that my relationship with my parents got a lot better because I was just less moody. But I also remember that was kind of when I noticed my stammer start to really fade away and not become a part of my speech. Because now I have the ability to talk like really fast. I mean, the most of the time that I'm speaking, it's to a camera and not to an actual human being. But even when I'm around people who I'm comfortable with, I don't stammer that often. And when I do, I just know to just stop right there and just restart. When I was a kid, my coping mechanism was I would just choose a different word, because if I was choosing a word, like if I was like, okay, like, for example, like this, like, I don't know, I would just choose a different word for something, right? If I was about to say like, oh, it's the house, I might just stop myself and just say building, you know? because taking that moment to like think about it, I can say the word building, you know. So that it's because I wasn't as much focused on the information I was communicating. I was focused on the actual like words coming out of my mouth. That helped. But again, like it didn't like make it go away until I really just made some like choices. And I don't have a stammer now, and I never observed it coming back when I don't smoke marijuana. It was more so just like a mental thing, you know. And I mean, there's probably studies on like how neurodivergency can be affected by weed, but I just know that a lot of people have like really strong, like people have really strong anxiety, and then they'll smoke weed and it'll change that either for the better or for the worse. It can be for the worse sometimes, but for some people, hold on. It can be for the better, like for the rest of their life, and that is what I experienced. But yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because it's something that I'm going to reference more in future videos, that it was really difficult for me. And like I said, I have like, it is an issue for me now because experientially I have been in, you know, relationships with people like dating who they were the focus of the relationship. And I've been in a lot of friendships where they were my best friend, yet they had another person that they considered to be their best friend, or maybe even multiple that they considered their best friend above me. So I've always been trying to impress people, you know, whether consciously or unconsciously. I'm going to say unconsciously, but if we're being honest here, I'm always trying to impress people, and I'm aware of that and have always been aware of that. Just because, I mean, everyone likes to impress people to some degree, you know. Everyone wants to make people happy. And I really care about making people happy. And my ability to make people laugh is usually one of those things. I can remember as a child, saying jokes was really hard because when I thought of a joke, it would be really hard to get it out. And I can remember thinking about, I don't remember what it was. I'll try and remember this and do a future video on this. About like my like experience of going from homeschool into public school. But I remember one time I raised my hand and I said a joke and the entire class laughed. And it was actually I don't remember if it was even supposed to be a joke or maybe it was just sort of an observation I was making. But I do remember being surprised that everyone laughed at it. And I remember feeling really good and then wanting to do that more and being like, oh, maybe this is how I can make friends. So it was very interesting and probably shows a little bit of neurodivergence that I was thinking about humor like as something that you do intentionally and engage with and not something that happens naturally. But yeah, like I said, I always had issues with it, and it was what was causing my stammer a lot of the times is trying to impress people. So yeah, in future videos, I'm going to reference back to this one about a potential starting point of a lot of my issues. I'm going to say issues, you know, they're just aspects of my personality that have caused issues. That's like the real thing. Anyway, I've gone about as far as I can on this topic here. But yeah, this is my video on what it was like to grow up with impeded speech. It's really difficult. I hope that if you have a speech impediment now, or maybe you had something similar where, you know, you had certain things that just like got beaten out of you as, you know, life went on. Hope you can relate to this and hope that you feel a little bit seen and heard. Thank you so much for watching this video. Yeah, this is my video diary. Just doing talking head style stuff. I'm going to try and get in cooler outfits and do like more full body stuff. But yeah, this is just like a kind of little just thing that like I just had to get off my chest because I've been really thinking about it like a lot today and just like remembering it. So I didn't have time to like find a good setup or like time of day. Had to just be right now while I'm in my parents' greenhouse. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of my music and video diaries and stuff. And yeah, you can check out my links down in the description. I'm very active on Instagram, very active on TikTok with the same username as my Instagram. Very active just on all the social medias I got down there. And also my music. This YouTube channel, I upload my music on here. I'm trying to keep it underground by like intentionally putting my music out in between these video diaries. But yeah, if you want to hear my music on streaming services, Spotify link is down there, and then Vernacular on all platforms. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you watch the end, you're a real one, and I love you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day, king or queen or royalty.